2 years ago, I met this guy. He was a working student while I had a stable job. I was 2 years ahead of him. He was just a first-year college student at the time, working night shifts. I admired his determination, knowing he was putting himself through school without financial support from his parents. I helped him whenever possible, whether with school projects when he was short on money or just making things a little easier for him. At one point, I even bought him a phone for his studies since his old one was barely working. Later, I got him a bike so he wouldn't have to walk long distances between school and work. I didn't care about the expenses because I believed in him. I always told him I'd be happiest to see him graduate. Then one Saturday in August, I planned to visit him at his apartment. I brought a pizza because he'd mentioned craving it. He didn't expect me to come though. He thought I wasn't feeling well and had a clinic appointment. When I got there, his room was locked from the inside. I saw his two roommates outside. One guy suddenly said to the other guy, "See, that's not his girlfriend." I was confused, but he discreetly signaled toward the room, hinting that he was inside with someone else. I walked away. I went straight to my best friend's place and cried. My friend, knowing I'd just been to a clinic, suggested I prank my boyfriend by telling him I was pregnant to see how he would react. I was heartbroken and angry, so I went along with it. I texted him saying I was pregnant. Since that day, he started offering me soft drinks constantly, even though he knew I never drank them. It felt weird, like what was he trying to do? A week later, he told me we needed to meet his parents. That's when I started to panic because there was no actual baby. When I met his parents, my heart sank. His mother's first words were, "Are you sure it's even my son's?" Then, without hesitation, she suggested I get a procedure, saying she knew people who could do it. At that moment, I realized what kind of family he came from. From cheating to pushing for a termination, for a baby that didn't even exist, I knew I had to leave him for good. Now he's been reaching out, saying he regrets everything and wishes he'd stepped up to be a father. He even asked if I would consider coming back. I thought about telling him there never was a baby to begin with, but at the same time, letting him believe it's real is part of his karma. Am I the idiot for not telling the truth? Not the idiot, but you missed the perfect opportunity to tell his mum you weren't pregnant. He must have confused you with his other girlfriend. That would have been such a good drama. You're definitely not the idiot for the prank. It was harmless compared to what he put you through. But the real takeaway is that you dodged a massive bullet with him and his family. The way his mom reacted tells you everything you need to know. If he's still reaching out, it's probably less about regret and more about guilt or control. Whether you tell him the truth or not is up to you, but either way, it's best to keep him in the past where he belongs. Everyone's the idiot here. Yes, your ex is awful, but pranking him is a low. Not as low as his and his family's treatment of you, but a low all the same. Just block and ignore. I hope that your friend is trustworthy, because if it comes out that you were lying, it could be a court issue, or he and his family go around calling you crazy. Agreed. Tell him there is no baby and then never speak to him again. As someone else mentioned, if he believes there is a child and lawyers up, you'll have to spill it at that point, and there's no way you won't look completely unhinged. You need to stop this snowball in its tracks. Everyone's the idiot here, him for cheating, and you for this colossal waste of time, energy and drama. There are no adults in this entire story. My dad, 47, got married to Deb, female 40, a few months ago. I, male nearly adult, live with my grandparents just like my dad did before he moved in with Deb and her 4 kids. I didn't move with my dad because I didn't want to uproot my life again, which we did a lot after my mom died, and I didn't want to deal with the headache that is Deb's oldest son. I don't know all the specifics of Deb's son, male teen, issues, but I know he has a caseworker and Deb gets all these services for him. To summarize everything, he has issues that make him angry and issues with authority that make him violent. He doesn't like school and doesn't want to sleep. He'd prefer to stay up playing video games all night and doesn't like when that can't happen. He doesn't want anyone in his space and is territorial about everything. I met him like 6 or 7 times before I said screw it and refused to go meet up with them. He basically terrorizes his younger siblings and his mom. My dad's being terrorized now too. Ever since the wedding, Dad has tried talking me into moving in with them. I told him no way. He asked me why I didn't want to live with him, and I told him I wasn't dealing with Deb's mess of a family. He said they're our family now too, and I told him they're his. He chose that, but they'll never be mine, and I told him there's nothing he'll say to change my mind about it. He told me they could really use me in the house, and I could be a huge asset for the other kids, and I could bond with them and help keep them safe. He told me their safety is a big concern right now, and Deb's trying to fight for her oldest son's right to get a placement for some kind of help instead of just being thrown into some other kind of help that's not helpful and makes kids like him worse. He told me I have a duty to help the younger members of my family stay safe. I asked him why that was my duty and why he thought his new stepkid's safety was my problem. I said I don't really feel obligated to keep them safe. He signed up for it. I didn't, and I won't sign up for it. Dad told me this is the kind of problem we take on when we become a family. I reminded him again that they were not my family. He made them his, and I'm choosing not to make them mine. He said that means he and I aren't family too, and I said if that's how he takes it, then yeah. Then he said he was disappointed in me dismissing the safety of his stepkids. I told him I was disappointed he wanted to put me in that position to begin with, so we could stay disappointed with each other. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. So your dad thinks you should step up and be the superhero in a sitcom where he's the lead? Who knew family dynamics came with the side of not letting the stepkids eat your snacks? What OP's dad really wants is a new punching bag for his stepson, so he leaves the other children alone. You made the right decision to stay with your grandparents. You have no obligation to his new family. You're almost a legal adult. Go live your life and do not get pulled into the disaster that your father signed up for. He sounds like he wants you to help him navigate this new burden and be some co-parent to these kids. Run. I would think your dad would be grateful that you're in a safe situation, which means that's one less concern. But I think he wants you there to be a free babysitter who also serves as a bouncer. Nope. I find it funny that parents literally get married and expect their kids to accept the mess they make. At least marry someone that adds value to your life, not more chaos. Sorry for Deb, but not your problem. Exactly. Not your problem. Ideally, Deb should send the teen to boarding school, probably a military boarding school for his sake and everyone else's. Failing that, he needs to have the video games taken away from him and, if he threatens the safety of the family, get sent to juvie. It may be too late for some tough love, but it's the only thing that might do anything. My 43 female daughter, Annie, tween, was invited to a party at a bowling alley to celebrate a classmate's birthday. Only girls were invited to the party and about 21 girls were in attendance. We were about 5 minutes late to the party and arrived at the same time as another classmate, Betty. Due to the long lines, it took Annie and Betty about 10 minutes to get their shoes and walk over to the lanes. The hostess had reserved 3 lanes next to each other. As typical with bowling alleys, there were 2 curved benches for seating for 4 lanes. When we arrived at the lanes, the other girls' names were programmed into the 2 lanes, and an adult male was programming his name in the 3rd lane. Annie went to the area and was directed to the 3rd lane. I said hi to a few of the other parents and saw that Annie left the area. I asked her where she was going and she said she'd been told to get a blue ball because it was lighter. I realised that the ball was £14, so I told her I would go look for a lighter ball for her. When I returned with a ball, one of the parents asked if I was bowling, and I said I was just getting a lighter ball for Annie. As I gave the ball to Annie, I heard the dad of one of the other girls say to Betty that her name was now on lane 2 as the birthday girl's mom. The hostess Dana came by. I asked Dana if Annie could also be added to lane 1 or 2 and was told that Annie is in lane 3. Surprised, I walked over to lane 3 to see that Annie had been added to lane 3. The only player on lane 3 was Annie, playing with the adult male who we didn't know, with a bunch of other kids named Kid 1, Kid 2 and Kid 3. I then saw Annie sitting by herself. I asked if she wanted to go to the other bench to join her friends, but she said she was on lane 3 and was waiting her turn to bowl, though the adult male was bowling for the other kids. I let her be and went back to talk to some of the parents, but 5 minutes later I realised she was still sitting alone on the bench rather than joining her classmates on the bench for lane 1 and 2. I walked over and asked her again why she hadn't joined the other classmates, and she said that she felt left out. So I asked her if she wanted to go. She said she did because she didn't want to play with the adult male stranger. So Annie and I walked out. As we went out the door, her friends asked why she was leaving and she said she didn't want to bowl with the male stranger. The other parents asked me why we were leaving, and I said that Annie was playing on a separate lane by herself. A few parents offered to have them take turns in lane 1 and 2, but by that time Annie had walked out. I then took her out for ice cream. After we left, I realised I could have asked Dana to divide the girls evenly into 3 lanes, but by then we'd already left. I'm upset that the hostess thought it was okay to isolate Annie, and I'm glad I didn't just drop her off and leave. Am I the idiot if I sent the hostess an email explaining why we left early, how the setup was exclusionary, and that having my daughter bowl with an adult male stranger instead of her classmates was improper? Not the idiot, but you should have asked why a stranger is bowling on the reserved lines. And yes, you should have asked Dana to divide the girls into the 3 lines. But it doesn't help now to send an angry email. It'll only backfire. Dana had much to do with the 21 kids there. Yes, it was bad that Annie was put on the last line, but I think no one was thinking that far. Children have the first come, first serve mentality and all want to be on the lines with their friends. And Dana had to do with all the other stuff, so I think she'll be just angry at an email and it could backfire to Annie and her friendship to the classmate. I disagree. I've never been at a kid's party where a kid is left out like that. It was a terribly poor organisation to the point of being mean. That's on the parent that organised it, and personally they should be called out on that. I can't wrap my head around how they ended up packing 10 kids to a lane when they still had 1 lane empty, but for a single adult in the first place. This entire thing is a mess. What I don't get, the hostess was clearly in over her head. She had a mess already and the people coming late made it worse. Over here you had this singular dad bowling, and over here you have the parents yipping at the parents' table. Why didn't anyone offer to help the hostess? Surely there was some legwork that needed to be done that would free her up to make decisions to help things go more smoothly. Opie could have done that. Lonely Dad could have done that. Parents at the parents' table could have done that. No one did that. Everyone's the idiot here. My wife, 31, and I, 35 male, have separate finances, but we share family expenses more or less evenly. I say more or less because I usually bear some additional expenses. For instance, I pay half of her private health insurance, I pay 100% of mine, and sometimes I pay the full rent and/or that full month's expenses. However, my wife has never been completely happy with this arrangement, since she believes that I, being a man, should be paying for 100%. We both have pretty good jobs and earn about the same income, although when we got married she had, and still has, considerably more savings than I. A couple of years ago, my wife decided to have bariatric surgery, and I, considering this to be a family expenditure, happily paid 50% of the bill. Now, about a month ago, I had an accident while weightlifting and had to get surgery. Thankfully, my private insurance covered about 60% of the costs and will cover 100% of my therapy. The outstanding bill is roughly equivalent to 1.5 of what my wife and I make in a month. I'm using this metric instead of giving you actual numbers because we're not American, so the cost of the bill and value of our salaries might not translate correctly if I just give a dollar amount. Now, this being an emergency procedure, I just assumed this would be considered a family expense, meaning that my wife would help me foot half of the bill. However, when I brought that up in a conversation today, she looked at me like I was crazy and refused, saying that she expects me to make enough to cover this bill. Now, I have enough savings to pay for this thing, but the whole thing makes me feel sad. My wife and I have a pretty loving relationship, and we recently had our first kid, which we love very much, but she's always resented the fact that she has to contribute financially to the family. So, am I the idiot for expecting my wife to pay for half of my surgery? Not the idiot. You should tell her how hurt and disappointed you are in her. The fact that she wouldn't be willing to help in emergencies has you rethinking how you spend. From now on, she's paying for half the rent, bills, and other household expenses, and you're not kicking in extra to allow her to save extra. You were there for her when she wanted and needed you. She couldn't do the same for you. Honestly, I can't even imagine being in a relationship where my partner doesn't see our family expenses as a joint responsibility. Glad to hear your surgery went well. Hopefully your wife will come around and see the importance of supporting each other financially. I don't even understand the arrangement, to be honest. They've agreed to separate finances and split expenses evenly. Still, sometimes he pays for everything, but she's apparently always believed the man should pay for everything. They both have good jobs but are on 2 separate private health insurances, but he pays 100% of his and half of hers, even though supposedly they've agreed to split evenly. It sounds like there's no actual agreement and they just sort of make crap up as they go, lol. Anyway, I'll never understand why people marry others with completely opposite convictions about very basic principles of life, such as money. My husband, 34, has this super annoying habit. If he's on his phone, watching TV, or just not in the mood to respond, he pretends he doesn't hear me. I'll ask him something and he'll just sit there ignoring me, even though I know he can hear me. I've called him out on it before, and he always says, "Oh, I just didn't hear you." but it happens way too often to be accidental. So last weekend we were at a family gathering and it happened again. I was trying to get his attention while he was scrolling on his phone and he completely ignored me. I even said his name 3 times. Nothing. So instead of getting angry, I decided to test something. I casually said, "Hey babe, there's cake in the kitchen." Suddenly he snapped his head up and went, "What kind of cake?" I just looked at him and said, "Oh, so you can hear me." His mom laughed, his sister smirked, and my husband turned red and got all huffy, saying I was trying to embarrass him on purpose. Now he's annoyed and says I was being passive-aggressive instead of talking privately to him about it. I told him I've tried talking to him about it and he always denies doing it. Am I the idiot for calling him out like that in front of his family? You embarrassed me on purpose. No, I showed that you are purposely acting in a way that is detrimental to a relationship. Your family laughing at you shows that they all agree. Oh my dear OP, do it repeatedly until he realizes that being dismissive and gaslighting you is not gonna fly. The next time he ignores you, ask him something like, "If you don't respond, I'm assuming you're agreeing that I can go do X. I asked you and you agreed. It's not my fault you couldn't be bothered to listen to what you were agreeing to do." Selective hearing is plain rude. He clearly is ignoring you, and if he isn't doing it on purpose, he needs hearing aids. I'd feign concern and force him to see a doctor. Either that or do the same thing right back to him until he realizes how problematic it is. Either way, you're not the problem here.